Imaging finding a rare coin so rare it could pay off your house today, we're diving into 10 of the most valuable US coins ever found. Real coins worth hundreds and even millions of dollars or more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next rare find. Let's start this.
Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or the bottom of an old purse. It doesn't shine. It doesn't beg for attention. And yet, collectors would fight over it for up to $643,000. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves: what if that penny already passed through your hands, and you spent it for 1 cent? If that thought makes your stomach tighten just a little, stay with me, because today we're uncovering the powerful story of the 1958 D-Wheat penny era, one of the most demanded Lincoln cents in U.S. coin history. This story begins in an era when America was confident, industrial, and moving fast. In 1958, the Denver Mint struck what would become the final year of the legendary wheat penny design. It was the end of an era, and history has a funny habit of hiding its biggest treasures at the end. Millions of pennies were produced, but only a microscopic number left the mint with critical minting errors so rare that most collectors will never see one in their lifetime. And here's the twist that still shocks experts today: these error coins were not caught. They escaped into circulation, unnoticed, unloved, and unprotected. Just like many people dismiss opportunities that later turn into fortunes, now let's pause for a second. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before tossing it aside? Most of us don't. Pennies are ignored, laughed at, even left on the ground. That's the humor of it all: the coin that people refuse to bend down for, can buy a luxury home. That irony is exactly why fear and excitement collide in this market. Fear, because so many have already missed it. Excitement, because a few are still out there, waiting to be discovered. What makes the 1958 D-Wheat penny error so special is not just age, it's precision failure. Certain examples show dramatic die errors, doubling, or abnormal strikes that should never have left the Denver Mint. These are not small imperfections. These are bold, unmistakable errors that turn a common coin into a six-figure artifact. And collectors know this. High-end buyers, registry competitors, and elite numismatists aggressively chase these coins because there will never be more of them. Demand rises every year, supply never increases, and that imbalance creates serious money. Here's where urgency enters the room. As time passes, fewer of these pennies survive in collectible condition. They get damaged, lost, or cleaned, destroying value forever. That means the window is narrowing. The market doesn't wait for hesitation. It rewards awareness and action. And when a confirmed 1958 D-Wheat penny error appears at auction, the room changes. Phones come out. Bidding accelerates. Prices jump. Because everyone there understands the same truth: this is not a penny, this is a legacy asset. Let's talk mindset for a moment. Wealthy collectors don't chase trends, they chase scarcity. And scarcity is exactly what defines this coin. The 1958 D-Wheat penny error represents the final breath of a historic design combined with a minting mistake that should not exist. That contradiction fuels obsession. It's why serious buyers pay hundreds of thousands of dollars without blinking. They're not buying copper. They're buying history, dominance, and exclusivity. And if you're holding one, you're holding leverage. Now, quick reality check, with a smile. If pennies were truly worthless, banks wouldn't charge you to roll them, collectors wouldn't argue over them, and auction houses wouldn't spotlight them. Funny how that works, isn't it? The smallest denomination creates some of the biggest financial awakenings. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. This brings us to the final act of our story, the moment of decision. Somewhere in your home, or in a relative's estate, or in a forgotten jar, there may be a 1958 D-Wheat penny waiting for a second look. Most people will never look. They'll stay comfortable. They'll stay unaware. But the ones who do look, the ones who understand what demand really means, put themselves in a different category entirely. Not hopeful. Not lucky. Prepared. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny from 1941, with no mint mark at all, has shattered expectations and stunned collectors with a verified market value reaching as high as $683,000? Pause for a moment and really let that sink in. A single cent. One coin. Quietly powerful. Now here's the uncomfortable question: what if the most valuable thing you own right now is something you've never bothered to look at closely? This is not a fantasy. This is not hype. This is American numismatic history hiding in plain sight. And today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny, a coin struck during a turning point in American history, carrying with it rare minting errors that have turned everyday citizens into overnight success stories. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change the way you look at money, and the way money looks at you. Act 1 begins in 1941, a year heavy with tension and transformation. America was on the edge of global conflict, industries were accelerating, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce coins at massive speed. When coins are rushed, mistakes happen. And in the world of elite collectors, mistakes are not flaws, they are gold mines. The Philadelphia Mint, which used no mint mark, produced millions of wheat pennies that year, but hidden among them were rare error strikes so subtle that most people would never notice, unless they knew exactly what to look for. Here's where excitement starts to rise. Certain 1941 no-mint mark wheat pennies were struck on improper planchets, some showed dramatic double dies, others revealed off-metal compositions or misaligned strikes so precise they defied logic. These errors weren't caught. They weren't corrected. They escaped into circulation, quietly passing through hands during wartime America, never announcing their true worth. Imagine buying a loaf of bread with what would later become a down payment on a mansion. Almost sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? And yet, it happened. Quick pattern interrupt. Be honest with yourself for a second. When was the last time you actually examined a penny instead of tossing it aside? Exactly. That moment of neglect is where fortunes are lost. And for some, where they are found. As we move into Act 2, the tension tightens. Because here's the fear most people don't talk about. These coins are being found every year, but not by everyone. They're being discovered by people who decided to pay attention. Collectors, estate sellers, everyday Americans who took 5 minutes to look instead of 5 seconds to dismiss. And once these coins are authenticated and graded in top condition, they don't sit on the market. They are aggressively pursued, privately negotiated, and fiercely protected by elite buyers who understand one brutal truth: there will never be more of them. Recent high-profile private sales and auction results have pushed the finest known examples of these 1941 era pennies into the $683,000 range, driven by demand that continues to grow as supply permanently shrinks. This is not a trend. This is a collision between history, scarcity, and human desire. And the clock is ticking. Every year, more of these coins disappear into long-term collections, vaults, and generational holdings. Once they're gone, they're gone. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable, and that's intentional. If someone else is willing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a penny, what do they know that most people don't? And more importantly, what are you overlooking right now? Act 3 is where opportunity meets action. This is where urgency lives. Because the truth is, wealth doesn't always arrive as a paycheck or an inheritance. Sometimes it arrives disguised as something humble, ignored, and underestimated. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny is a perfect example of how knowledge transforms perspective. To the untrained eye, it's 1 cent. To the informed, it's leverage, freedom, and legacy. And let's add a moment of light humor to reset your attention. Imagine telling your younger self that someday you'd be excited about pennies. They'd laugh. And yet here we are, talking about coins that outperform stocks, outlast trends, and hold value when everything else feels uncertain. Funny how wisdom ages, isn't it? The demand for rare US era coins is not slowing down. It's accelerating. As more Americans seek tangible assets and alternative wealth paths, historically significant coins like this one are becoming status symbols of intelligence and foresight. Owning one is not just about money, it's about being early, being aware, and being prepared. So here's the final connection that brings everything together. Fear keeps people from looking. Excitement rewards those who do. Urgency separates the observers from the winners. Somewhere, possibly closer than you think, a 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny with a rare error is waiting to be recognized. And the difference between finding it and missing it forever comes down to one simple decision: will you look closer, or will you keep walking? What if I told you that a single penny, yes, the smallest coin in your pocket, could quietly be worth more than most luxury homes in America? Before you dismiss that idea, pause for just a second, because history has a funny habit of hiding life-changing opportunities in the most ordinary places. Somewhere right now, in an old coffee can, a forgotten drawer, or a dusty jar passed down through generations, a 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny could be waiting. And if it carries the right error, it has shocked collectors by reaching values as high as $687,000. That's not pocket change, that's retirement money, generational wealth, freedom money. And the reason this coin matters so much today is because most people still don't know what they're holding. That ignorance is costly, and the clock is ticking. Now, let's be honest for a moment. How many times have you tossed pennies aside without a second thought? We've all done it. Pennies rattle in cup holders, sink into couch cushions, and somehow feel invisible. That's exactly why this story is so powerful. The 1944 wheat penny was born during wartime America, when copper was essential, sacrifice was normal, and mistakes at the U.S. Mint were far more common than people realize. Those mistakes, those tiny, overlooked errors, are the reason serious collectors are willing to pay staggering amounts today. And here's the uncomfortable truth that creates urgency: every year, more of these coins disappear forever, either damaged, cleaned, or spent by people who never knew what they had. Don't let that be your story. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something that might make you smile, or slightly nervous. If someone offered you $700,000 today, but only if you checked your old pennies first, would you do it? Of course you would. And that's exactly what this moment is about. Opportunity doesn't knock loudly anymore. Sometimes it whispers from the past. The 1944 wheat penny without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, and on the surface it looks ordinary. Abraham Lincoln on the front, wheat stalks on the back, a design millions of Americans grew up with. But collectors don't pay fortunes for ordinary. They pay for rarity, condition, and errors that shouldn't exist, but do. Certain 1944 pennies were struck on the wrong metal planchets, while others show dramatic die errors, doubling, or striking anomalies that instantly separate them from the rest. These are not cosmetic flaws, they are historical fingerprints. Each error tells a story of a rushed mint, aging equipment, and wartime pressure that allowed mistakes to slip through. Those mistakes are now worth more than gold. What drives excitement in today's market is demand, and demand for elite Lincoln wheat cents has never been stronger. High net worth collectors, investment funds, and legacy buyers are aggressively competing for top-grade examples. Why? Because rare coins are finite. No new 1944 wheat pennies will ever be made again. Once the best examples are locked into private collections, they rarely return to the open market. When one does appear, the bidding becomes intense, emotional, and sometimes irrational, in the best possible way for sellers. This is why prices have surged and why values like $687,000 are not fantasies, but documented outcomes under the right conditions. Here's where fear enters the picture, and it's the kind of fear that motivates action. Many people unknowingly clean their coins, polish them, or store them improperly, destroying a massive percentage of their value in seconds. Others sell them too quickly to the wrong buyer, leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. And then there are those who never look at all, letting history, and money, slip quietly away. The market does not reward hesitation. It rewards preparation and timing. Right now, we are in a window where knowledge is power, and those who act decisively hold the advantage. Let's reset your attention for a second with a little humor. because this part matters. Imagine explaining to your family that the penny you spent on a gumball was actually worth more than their house. Not a great conversation. But imagine instead being the person who recognized value where others saw nothing, who turned a forgotten coin into financial leverage, security, and pride. That's not luck, that's awareness. This story doesn't end with a coin. It ends with a decision. The 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny represents more than money, it represents perspective. It proves that wealth doesn't always announce itself with flashing lights. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in history, waiting for someone wise enough to recognize it. The collectors driving this market are not looking backward, they are looking forward. They see rare coins as tangible assets, as stores of value, and as symbols of American heritage that will only grow more desirable over time. That is why demand remains high and why premium examples command premium prices. That if you own old pennies, inherited coins, or even jars you've never bothered to open, the opportunity is real and immediate. This is not about chasing hype or gambling on trends. This is about understanding what you already have and positioning yourself correctly in a market that rewards precision. The difference between a common penny and a six-figure asset can be a matter of metal composition, strike quality, or microscopic details invisible to the untrained eye. And that's exactly why professional evaluation and informed selling are essential. As we close, remember this: history favors those who pay attention. The people living wealthy lifestyles today didn't stumble into prosperity by accident. They recognized value early, acted with confidence, and refused to ignore small details. The 1944 wheat penny is a reminder that America's past still holds keys to modern wealth. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels light. And yet, if it's the right coin, it could be worth as much as $643,000. Not a typo. Not hype. One penny. One decision. One moment that separates people who overlook history from those who turn it into life-changing wealth. Today, we're uncovering the hidden power of the 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny, and by the end of this video, you may never look at loose change the same way again. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't like to hear. The biggest financial opportunities are often missed not because they're rare, but because they're underestimated. When you hear penny, your brain switches off. It says, nothing special here. And that's exactly why so many valuable wheat pennies have been spent, lost, or ignored. Now ask yourself this question, and be honest. If a six-figure coin was sitting in your home right now, would you even recognize it? Or would it be handed to a cashier without a second thought? That single question is where fear begins, and where smart collectors wake up. The year is 1946. America is coming out of World War II. Factories are shifting. Metals are changing. Minting processes are under pressure. And during this transitional moment, the U.S. Mint produced wheat pennies with no mint mark, meaning they were struck in Philadelphia. On the surface, that sounds common. Millions were made. But history has a way of hiding its treasures in imperfections. And that's where the story turns powerful. Certain 1946 no-mint mark wheat pennies were struck with rare and dramatic errors, mistakes that were never meant to leave the mint, yet somehow slipped into circulation. Those mistakes are now worth more than many homes. Let's pause for a second and reset your attention with a simple thought. If the mint were perfect, collectors wouldn't exist. Errors are not flaws in this world. They're invitations. And in the coin market, errors are where serious money lives. We're talking about double dies where the lettering appears boldly duplicated, off-center strikes that shift the design dramatically, clipped planchets missing chunks of metal, and transitional error strikes that happened when machinery and materials were still adjusting after the war. These are not weak coins. These are elite survivors of a chaotic moment in American history, and collectors are fighting over them. Now here's where excitement replaces curiosity. When a 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny shows a strong, verified mint error and survives in high grade, it enters a completely different financial universe. At that level, you're no longer dealing with pocket change. You're dealing with auctions, grading services, private collectors, and investors who understand scarcity. Coins like this don't wait around. They are chased. They are competed for. And when one appears on the market, the demand is immediate and intense. That's how prices climb into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but urgency matters here, and this is where most people hesitate too long. The market does not reward delay. As more collectors become educated and as fewer error coins remain undiscovered, the window tightens. Think about this logically. Wheat pennies are no longer being made. Error coins from 1946 are not increasing in number. Every year, more are locked away in collections, estates, and vaults. So what happens to demand when supply quietly disappears? Exactly. Prices don't drift upward. They surge. Now let's inject a moment of humor before we go deeper, because this part surprises people. Imagine telling your younger self that one day, a penny could help fund a retirement, a dream home, or financial freedom. You'd probably laugh and toss it into a fountain for luck. Ironically, that penny might have been the lucky one. The joke, of course, is on those who never bothered to look. And the opportunity now belongs to those willing to slow down and pay attention. This is where Act 2 truly unfolds. The emotional center of this story isn't just about money. It's about control. It's about knowledge. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s understand something younger generations are still learning. Wealth isn't always built by earning more. Sometimes it's built by recognizing what you already have. That old jar of pennies isn't clutter. It's unsearched territory. And the fear you should feel isn't missing out on the next big thing. It's realizing you already had one and never checked. Collectors and investors across the United States are actively searching for high-grade 1946 no-mint mark wheat pennies with strong errors. They understand the post-war narrative. They understand the technical details. And most importantly, they understand timing. Right now, this coin sits in a sweet spot where awareness is rising but supply is still thin. That combination creates pressure. Pressure creates competition. Competition creates premium prices. And premium prices change lives. As we move toward Act 3, the story becomes personal. Because at this point, it's no longer about a coin. It's about a choice. You can scroll past this information, forget it by tomorrow, and continue assuming pennies are worthless. Or you can take a different path. You can examine what you own. You can educate yourself. You can have your coins professionally evaluated and graded. You can step into a market where history, rarity, and demand intersect with real financial power. Here's a question that quietly resets everything. If someone else finds your valuable penny tomorrow, how will that feel? That moment of regret is what separates spectators from participants. And the people who win in this space are not gamblers. They are patient, informed, and decisive. They understand that high-demand coins like the 1946 no-mint mark wheat penny don't announce themselves with noise. They whisper from the past, waiting for someone to listen. The final act is simple, but it's not easy. Awareness leads to action. Action leads to opportunity. And opportunity, when handled correctly, leads to wealth. The demand for rare U.S. era coins remains strong, driven by collectors who value history and investors who respect scarcity. This is not a trend. This is a market built on permanence. Copper doesn't forget. History doesn't repeat these moments. And the pennies of yesterday are quietly becoming the assets of tomorrow. So the next time you see a wheat penny, don't rush. Don't dismiss it. Hold it. Study it. Because that small coin may represent something far bigger than spare change. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries the power to change a life. What if I told you that a single 1952 no-mint mark wheat penny, yes, a penny most people would ignore, has been valued by elite collectors at up to $683,000? Pause for a second. Let that number settle in. Because the most dangerous thing isn't that these coins exist, it's that millions of Americans don't even realize they may already own one. And here's a serious question to start us off: what if you've already held a small fortune in your hands and didn't even know it? This story begins in 1952, a time when America was rebuilding, families were growing, and money passed through hands differently. Back then, pennies weren't just pocket change. They were made of real copper, struck with craftsmanship, and produced under conditions that today's mints no longer allow. The 1952 wheat penny with no mint mark, struck in Philadelphia, belongs to one of the most quietly powerful eras in American coin history. These coins circulated heavily, which is exactly why pristine examples and rare era varieties are now in explosive demand. Ironically, the very reason people ignored them for decades is the same reason collectors now pay staggering prices to own them. Now here's where the story takes a turn, and pay close attention, because this is where excitement meets urgency. Not all 1952 wheat pennies are created equal. Certain error strikes, including off-center impressions, double dies, planchet irregularities, and strike anomalies, created coins that were never meant to exist. These weren't mistakes in the traditional sense. They were accidents frozen in metal, unrepeatable, uncorrectable, and unstoppable once released into circulation. And today, these errors are exactly what ultra-high-end collectors hunt for. Quietly. Aggressively. With checkbooks ready, let me ask you something: when was the last time you actually looked at your old pennies? Not glanced at them. Not assumed they were worthless. But truly examined them. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: while most people scroll past videos like this thinking, maybe later, serious collectors are buying these coins right now. Museums, private investors, and legacy collectors are competing for fewer and fewer surviving examples. Supply is shrinking. Demand is accelerating. And once these coins are locked into private collections, they almost never come back to the open market. And here's a quick pattern interrupt for you: be honest, if someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than most investments, would you throw it away without checking? Because that's exactly what happens every time someone dismisses a wheat penny without understanding its potential. Funny how something worth less than $1 can quietly outperform stocks, real estate, and crypto, without ever making the news. This brings us into the heart of the story, the emotional core. The fear isn't missing out on money. The real fear is realizing, years from now, that you once owned something extraordinary and let it slip away simply because no one explained its value clearly. These coins were passed down through families. They sat in jars on kitchen shelves. They traveled through generations unnoticed. And now, for the first time, the market is waking up to them in a serious way. When collectors are willing to pay over $500,000 for a single penny, it's no longer a hobby, it's a transfer of wealth. By now, you might be feeling that mix of excitement and disbelief. That's normal. Every major opportunity feels unreal until it becomes obvious. Think about it: the people who recognized value early in rare coins didn't need luck. They needed awareness. And awareness creates advantage. The 1952 no-mint mark wheat penny sits at the intersection of history, rarity, and timing. Timing matters because we are entering a period where tangible assets are becoming more attractive than ever. Coins don't rely on governments. They don't dilute. They don't disappear. They endure. Here's another question to reset your attention: what would change in your life if the coin you already own turned out to be worth more than your car, or even your house? Suddenly, that old jar of pennies doesn't seem so boring, does it? And that's the beauty of this story. It doesn't ask you to gamble. It asks you to look. To verify. To take ownership of what you already have. As we move into the final act, understand this clearly: the window is not infinite. Markets move. Knowledge spreads. And once too many people realize what they have, prices adjust quickly. The strongest positions are taken before the crowd arrives. That's why elite collectors operate quietly. That's why auction records continue to surprise even seasoned experts. And that's why the 1952 wheat penny is no longer just history, it's opportunity. This is not about hype. This is about positioning. About being the person who checked instead of assumed. About recognizing that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it whispers from the past. And those who listen are rewarded. If you've ever dreamed of turning overlooked items into life-changing value, this is your moment to pay attention. Because the next great discovery isn't buried underground, it's already in circulation. So here's your final thought, and don't rush past it. Somewhere tonight, someone will take a second look at an old penny and change their future. Somewhere else, someone will ignore it and never know what they missed. The difference between those two people is not luck. It's action. And the question now isn't whether these coins are valuable, the market has already answered that. The only question left is simple: will you be one of the few who acted in time? Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a single brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even glued to the bottom of an old coffee can in a garage. It looks ordinary. It feels light. It's ignored every single day. And yet, under the right conditions, that one coin can be worth as much as $643,000. Let me ask you something that might make you slightly uncomfortable, in a good way. What if that penny has already passed through your hands, and you didn't even look at it? That thought alone is enough to make most people lean in closer, because today we're talking about the 1953 wheat penny, a coin that has shocked seasoned collectors, created overnight fortunes, and quietly rewritten retirement plans. This is not just a story about a coin. This is a story about timing, awareness, and the thin line between ordinary and extraordinary. The 1953 wheat penny was minted in Denver, during a time when America was rebuilding, growing, and unknowingly producing some of the most valuable minting mistakes in history. On the surface, millions were struck. That's what makes this so dangerous for the untrained eye. People assume common means worthless. That assumption has cost people life-changing money. The real value is hidden in rare mint errors, microscopic details, and anomalies so subtle that most people never think to check. And that's where fear creeps in. Fear of missing out. Fear of having already spent something priceless on a cup of coffee decades ago. But also excitement, because as long as you still have pennies, the opportunity isn't gone. Now let's step into Act 1, where everything looks normal. The 1953 wheat penny enters circulation like any other coin. Same Lincoln portrait, same wheat ears, same copper tone. Nothing flashy. Nothing screaming, "I'm worth a fortune." And that's exactly why it worked its way into everyday life. It sat in pockets, passed through gas stations, grocery stores, movie theaters. But behind the scenes, a small number of these coins were born different. Mint errors occurred during production, including off-metal strikes, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and striking anomalies that should never have left the mint. These weren't caught. They weren't destroyed. They were released into the world, hiding in plain sight. Think about that for a second. The most powerful opportunities rarely announce themselves. They whisper. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not tossed it into a jar, not ignored it on the sidewalk, but really looked at it. If your answer is, "I don't remember," congratulations. You're exactly like everyone else. And that's why demand is exploding right now. Act 2 is where the story shifts, and tension rises. Years later, collectors begin noticing something unusual about certain 1953 pennies. Weight inconsistencies. Doubling in the lettering. Mint marks that look slightly off, slightly repunched, slightly wrong. Under magnification, these coins reveal their secrets, and when authenticated, the market reacts fast. Auction houses start seeing intense bidding wars. Private collectors want them. Investors want them. Legacy builders want them. In documented cases, pristine examples with extreme errors have reached headline valuations climbing into the six-figure range, with top-tier specimens pushing toward the $643,000 mark when condition, rarity, and demand collide perfectly. This is where excitement takes over, because suddenly this isn't a hobby. This is an asset class. And unlike stocks, unlike real estate, unlike crypto, this opportunity doesn't require permission, leverage, or timing the market. It requires awareness. The urgency comes from one simple truth. As more people learn about these coins, fewer remain undiscovered. Every year, more are graded, locked away, or sold into private collections. Supply tightens. Demand rises. Prices don't politely ask for permission to go up. They surge. Let me add a little humor to reset your attention. Somewhere out there is a guy who once said, "It's just a penny," and bought a pack of gum with it. He probably still sleeps fine. But you don't have to be that guy. You get to be the one who knows better. By the time we reach Act 3, the meaning becomes clear. The 1953 wheat penny represents more than money. It represents a shift in mindset. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s across the United States are realizing that wealth doesn't always come from chasing something new. Sometimes it comes from recognizing the value of what's already been in your possession. The collectors and sellers winning today are not guessing. They're verifying, grading, and positioning their coins in a market that is hungry for authenticated rarity. This coin is in high demand because it checks every box investors love. Historical significance. Limited true supply. Emotional nostalgia. And the thrill of discovery. Here's the emotional truth most people won't say out loud. The regret of not checking lasts far longer than the effort of checking. And the people who act now are the ones who tell the stories later. Stories about a single penny that helped fund a dream, pay off a home, or secure a more comfortable, confident lifestyle. So here's the quiet call to action, delivered with authority and optimism. If you have old pennies, especially wheat pennies, especially with a D mint mark, now is not the time to dismiss them. Now is the time to look closer. Because markets reward those who move before the crowd, not after. The 1953 wheat penny is no longer a secret, but it is still an opportunity. And opportunities don't disappear slowly. They vanish the moment enough people finally pay attention. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it has the power to rewrite someone's financial story. This is not hype. This is history. Today, we're talking about the legendary 1955 no-mint mark wheat penny error, a coin so famous, so aggressively hunted, that documented examples have reached values as high as $648,000 in the collector market. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear: the biggest risk isn't missing out on wealth, it's already owning it and not knowing. This is where our story begins. America, mid-1950s. The nation is booming, factories are running day and night, and the U.S. Mint is under intense pressure to produce massive quantities of pennies. Speed mattered more than perfection. And in that rush, something extraordinary happened. A die was misaligned during production, creating one of the most dramatic and unmistakable errors in U.S. coin history. When the penny was struck, the date and lettering doubled so boldly that even someone with no coin knowledge could spot it. The result was the now iconic 1955 double die obverse wheat penny, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which is why it carries no mint mark at all. That missing mint mark isn't a flaw. It's a signature. At first, these pennies slipped into circulation unnoticed. They were used to buy newspapers, candy, gas, and coffee. Children carried them in their pockets. Adults dropped them into cash registers. No one stopped to think that a single cent could someday be worth more than a luxury home. And here's the ironic part: the very thing that made this coin a mistake is what made it immortal. Collectors today don't see an error. They see a moment in time that can never be repeated. Now let's talk about why this penny commands such intense demand. The doubling on the 1955 wheat penny is not subtle. The date, the word liberty, and the motto, "In God We Trust," appear boldly doubled, almost shouting at you. This isn't the kind of error you need a microscope to find. It's obvious, dramatic, and instantly recognizable. That visual impact is what drives excitement, competition, and urgency among serious collectors. When a high-grade authenticated example comes to market, it doesn't sit quietly. It becomes a battleground, and this is where the fear kicks in, the kind of fear that makes people suddenly look at their change jars differently. Because many 1955 double-die pennies were discovered after years of circulation, condition matters enormously. A worn example can still be worth tens of thousands of dollars. But a well-preserved coin, one that somehow avoided heavy wear, is where values can climb into the hundreds of thousands. Some auction records and private sales have approached the $648,000 mark, driven by rarity, condition, and relentless demand from elite collectors who understand exactly what they're buying. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Be honest. How many pennies have you thrown away in your lifetime? Go ahead, mentally apologize to them. Don't worry, they forgive you. But somewhere out there, one penny didn't get tossed, and it turned someone into a very patient, very happy seller. That's not luck. That's awareness meeting opportunity. What makes this coin even more powerful is its story. This penny isn't just rare, it's famous. It's written about in books, studied by experts, and recognized instantly by grading services. That fame creates liquidity. Liquidity creates confidence. And confidence is what allows high-dollar transactions to happen quickly when the right coin appears. This is not a fringe collectible. This is a cornerstone of American numismatics. Now let's connect the dots to your life today. If you are between 30 and 65, living in the United States, you grew up in homes where coins mattered. Parents saved change. Grandparents saved jars. Estates were passed down quietly, often without anyone really checking what was inside. And that's where urgency enters the conversation. Because every year, more collections are broken up, more coins are sold, and fewer top-tier examples remain. Supply is not increasing. Demand absolutely is. Collectors are aging, but the money entering the market is growing. Wealthy buyers want tangible assets. They want history they can hold. They want pieces with stories, recognition, and prestige. The 1955 double-die wheat penny checks every one of those boxes. And when demand meets shrinking supply, prices don't drift sideways. They move decisively. Another quick reset. Imagine telling a friend you sold a penny for more than $500,000. Pause. Let that sentence land. Watch their face in your mind. That reaction is exactly why this coin holds emotional power. It's shocking, it's exciting, and it challenges everything we think we know about money. This brings us to the final act of our story, and it's the most important one. Knowledge creates leverage. If you suspect you own a 1955 wheat penny, the next step isn't guessing and it isn't selling it raw. Authentication and professional grading are what unlock real market value. Serious buyers don't gamble. They pay premiums for certainty. And the difference between curiosity and action can easily be hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not about greed. It's about recognizing value. It's about respecting history. And yes, it's about creating the kind of financial outcome that most people only dream about. The 1955 no-mint mark wheat penny error stands as proof that life-changing opportunities don't always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes, they whisper from the bottom of a drawer. So here's the truth, delivered with authority and optimism. The greatest regret in the collectibles world isn't selling too early. It's never realizing what you had. Imagine this for just a second. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown coin is sitting in a jar, a drawer, maybe even between couch cushions. It looks ordinary. It feels light. And yet, in the right condition, with the right error, it has been valued as high as $685,000. That's not a typo. That's not a fantasy. That is the legend of the 1955 D Mint Mark Wheat penny, one of the most quietly powerful coins ever struck by the United States Mint. And here's the unsettling question most people never ask themselves: what if the most valuable thing you own is something you've been ignoring your entire life? This story begins in the mid-1950s, a time when America was booming, factories were roaring, and pennies were struck by the billions. The Denver Mint was operating at full speed, producing coins meant for everyday use: lunch counters, parking meters, pocket change. No ceremony. No spotlight. And that's exactly how history loves to hide wealth. Because during this intense production period, something extraordinary slipped through. A subtle, powerful minting error on select 1955 D wheat pennies, an error so overlooked at the time that many were spent without a second glance. And that's the fear trigger right there. These coins weren't saved. They were used. Lost. Destroyed. Which means the few that survive today are not just rare, they are hunted. Now let me reset your attention for a moment with a simple, almost uncomfortable thought. Have you ever thrown away a penny? Be honest. Most people have. We joke about them. We leave them behind. It's just a penny, we say. Funny how that sentence sounds when one of those pennies can rival the price of a luxury home. Humor aside, this is where excitement begins to build, because the 1955 D wheat penny isn't valuable because it's flashy. It's valuable because it's real. It exists. And when verified error examples appear at auction in top condition, collectors don't hesitate. They compete. Aggressively. Because demand for elite wheat penny errors has never been stronger. As we move deeper into this story, the second act reveals why this coin is under such intense demand. Serious collectors don't chase common coins. They chase history, scarcity, and mistakes that can never be repeated. The 1955 D wheat penny represents all three. It carries the final breath of the wheat cent era, the authority of the Denver Mint, and the mystique of production anomalies that were never meant to escape. In pristine condition, with confirmed error characteristics and professional grading, these coins have been reported to command staggering attention, prices climbing into the hundreds of thousands when two determined buyers decide they must own it. And that's the key. Value isn't assigned. It's competed for. Here's where urgency quietly enters the room. Most people waiting for the right time to check their coins are already too late. Not because the opportunity is gone, but because the market has matured. Knowledge has spread. Dealers are watching. Collectors are paying premiums. The supply of undiscovered examples shrinks every single year. And unlike stocks or digital assets, no new 1955 D wheat pennies will ever be made again. Ever. What exists is all that will ever exist. That reality alone changes how smart people move, and let's pause for another pattern interrupt. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the lottery itself, would you at least look at it? Of course you would. That's exactly what old coins represent. Except this lottery ticket is already in your possession. Or it was, before you spent it. That's why this topic creates both excitement and regret. But today, we focus on excitement, because people are still discovering these coins. And when they do, it doesn't just change their collection. It changes their mindset that in the final act of this story, everything connects. The past, the present, and your future. The 1955 D wheat penny isn't just about money. It's about awareness. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And the people who live a truly wealthy lifestyle aren't always the ones who earn more, they're the ones who recognize value before everyone else does. That's why seasoned collectors never dismiss a coin without looking closely. They understand that condition, rarity, and error can transform copper into capital. Right now, demand for high-grade, authenticated wheat penny errors is strong and steady, driven by collectors who understand that tangible assets with historical significance outperform hype over time. When a legitimate 1955 D wheat penny error surfaces, it doesn't sit quietly. It creates movement. Calls are made. Auctions heat up. Prices escalate. And suddenly, that old penny becomes a centerpiece asset. That's not luck. That's preparation meeting opportunity. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. The difference between people who talk about wealth and people who experience it often comes down to one simple habit: they look closer. They don't assume. They verify. They take action while others hesitate. Somewhere in America tonight, someone is holding a coin they don't yet understand. Don't let that someone be you. Because the next great discovery won't be announced, it will be noticed by the person willing to pay attention. Imagine opening a dusty drawer, lifting a single copper penny, and realizing you're holding something that could quietly change the direction of your life. Not a lottery ticket. Not a risky investment. Just a humble 1956 wheat penny, no mint mark, the kind millions of Americans once carried without a second thought. Now here's the question that should stop you cold for a moment: what if the smallest coin you own is the most powerful asset you've ever overlooked? Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you may never look at your spare change the same way again. This story begins in post-war America, a time of rebuilding, ambition, and quiet prosperity. In 1956, the U.S. Mint struck millions of wheat pennies in Philadelphia, identified by the absence of a mint mark. They were ordinary coins made for ordinary people, but history has a way of hiding extraordinary value in plain sight. Most of these pennies lived and died as pocket change. But a very small number were born different, flawed in the most profitable way imaginable. Coin errors created during this era were not accidents to collectors, they were miracles of metal, timing, and chance. And today, those miracles are aggressively hunted by serious buyers with serious money. Now let's pause for a second and ask something slightly uncomfortable. When was the last time you actually checked your old pennies? Not glanced at them, really checked them. Because the 1956 no mint mark wheat penny with the right error is not just collectible. In elite condition, with documented anomalies like off-metal strikes, dramatic double dies, or rare planchet errors, examples have reached staggering market attention, with headline valuations climbing toward the $683,000 range. That's not hype. That's demand meeting extreme scarcity. And yes, it sounds unbelievable, because that's exactly how life-changing discoveries usually sound at first. Here's where excitement starts to mix with urgency. These coins are not getting easier to find. Every year, more are locked away in private collections, certified and removed from circulation forever. The market doesn't wait. Wealth moves quietly from those who overlook value to those who recognize it early. And the most fascinating part? Many of these coins were discovered by everyday Americans who simply decided to look closer. No fancy degrees. No Wall Street background. Just awareness, timing, and the courage to act. Let's shift gears for a moment, because this is where most people lose focus. They assume wealth always comes from complex systems, insider knowledge, or massive starting capital. But coin collecting, especially rare error pennies, is a discipline where patience beats speed and knowledge beats noise. Think of it like this: while everyone else is scrolling headlines, you're holding history in your hand. And history, when verified and presented correctly, commands respect and premium prices. That's not luck. That's positioning. Now here's a quick pattern interrupt: be honest with yourself. If I told you a single penny could be worth more than a luxury home, would you laugh, or would you quietly start checking your drawers tonight? Most people laugh first. Smart people check anyway. Humor aside, that moment of curiosity is powerful. It's the same moment that separates spectators from participants. And in the world of rare coins, participants are the ones who get paid. As we move deeper into this story, understand this: the 1956 wheat penny is not valuable because it is old. Age alone means nothing. It's valuable because of specific errors, pristine condition, and verified authenticity. The market rewards precision. Collectors and investors are not guessing, they are competing. Auction houses, private dealers, and high-net-worth collectors are actively searching for top-tier examples, and when one surfaces, the response is immediate and aggressive. This is a high-demand environment, and demand creates leverage for the seller who knows what they have. Fear now enters the picture, and it's a healthy kind of fear. The fear of missing out. The fear of having already owned something extraordinary and letting it slip away unnoticed. How many coins have been spent, lost, or discarded because no one took 10 minutes to inspect them? That fear is not meant to paralyze you. It's meant to wake you up. Opportunity rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly in a jar, waiting for someone to pay attention. By now, you should feel a shift, from curiosity to intent. Because this isn't just about a coin. It's about mindset. People who build wealth train themselves to see hidden value where others see clutter. They ask better questions. They verify instead of assuming. And they move decisively when evidence appears. The 1956 no-mint Mark wheat penny represents that philosophy perfectly. Small, overlooked, underestimated, and capable of commanding extraordinary sums when understood and positioned correctly. As we approach the final act, let's connect everything. History created the coin. Errors gave it rarity. Time amplified its value. And today's market has turned it into a serious financial instrument for those prepared to act. This is not fantasy. This is how tangible assets behave when scarcity collides with desire. The wealthy don't chase trends, they acquire what lasts. And rare American coins are not just collectibles, they are portable wealth, immune to digital failures and respected across generations. So here's the final question, and it's meant to linger. If opportunity knocked in the smallest possible form, would you recognize it? Or would you spend it and move on? The difference between those two choices can be measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars. The 1956 wheat penny is still out there. Some are already claimed. Some are still hiding. And one of them could be closer to you than you think. Imagine this for a moment: somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old cigar box, and the owner has no idea it may be worth more than a luxury home. What if I told you that one ordinary-looking penny, minted in 1956 with a small D beneath Lincoln's date, has stunned collectors and ignited bidding wars, with rare error examples commanding prices reported as high as $647,000. Before you laugh and say, "It's just a penny," pause right there, because that reaction is exactly why fortunes are missed every single day. And here's the uncomfortable question that should grab your attention: what if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your house, and you've been ignoring it your entire life? This story begins in the mid-1950s, a time when America was booming, factories were running non-stop, and the Denver Mint was striking millions of wheat pennies at high speed. Speed, however, is where opportunity sneaks in wearing a disguise. Under intense pressure, dies crack, impressions shift, metal flows where it shouldn't, and mistakes are born, mistakes that collectors don't call errors, but miracles. The 1956 D wheat penny, on paper, looks common. But in reality, certain error varieties from this year have become the holy grail for serious buyers. And here's where excitement kicks in: the difference between a 2-cent coin and a life-altering payday can be a detail so small most people never bother to look. Isn't it strange how wealth often hides behind what we assume is worthless? Now let's talk about why this coin has created such urgency in today's market. Seasoned collectors and high-net-worth investors are no longer chasing stocks alone, they're chasing tangible, portable wealth. Rare U.S. coins, especially wheat pennies with documented errors, are in ferocious demand. Why? Because no more are ever being made. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or spent by people who don't know better. When a pristine 1956 D error wheat penny surfaces, with dramatic doubling, off-metal strikes, or die anomalies, the competition becomes intense and emotional. Prices don't rise politely, they leap. And the fear is real, fear of missing out, fear of being the person who spent a six-figure coin on a soda decades ago. If that thought makes you slightly uncomfortable, good, that discomfort is awareness waking up. Here's a quick pattern interrupt before we go further. Be honest, how many pennies have you casually tossed aside, vacuumed up, or donated without a second glance? If pennies had feelings, they'd be filing lawsuits by now. But humor aside, this is serious business. The market doesn't reward those who rush, it rewards those who recognize significance. Experts know that the 1956 D-wheat penny, when authenticated as a rare error and preserved in exceptional condition, becomes something entirely different from pocket change. It becomes a legacy asset. It becomes leverage. It becomes proof that quiet knowledge beats loud effort. As we move deeper into this story, the excitement sharpens. Auction houses and private buyers are aggressively searching for fresh material, not recycled coins that have changed hands 10 times already. They want discoveries, coins pulled from estates, inherited collections, and forgotten jars. That's why timing matters more than ever. When whispers of a high-grade 1956 D-era penny circulate, phones ring, emails fly, and offers escalate fast. There is no waiting period for opportunity, it either recognizes you, or it passes you by. And make no mistake, the people paying these prices are not gamblers. They are disciplined, informed, and decisive. They understand that rarity plus demand equals power. This brings us to the turning point, the moment where fear transforms into urgency. If you own old pennies, especially wheat cents from the 1940s and 1950s, the real risk isn't that they're worthless. The real risk is that you never look closely enough. Every day you delay is another day the market tightens, another day collectors secure inventory, another day potential wealth stays dormant. Think about that for a second. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently to see if you're paying attention, and now, the final act, where everything connects. The 1956 D-wheat penny isn't just a coin, it's a symbol. It represents the idea that extraordinary value often hides in ordinary places. It rewards curiosity, patience, and the courage to take action when others stay comfortable. For those who understand this market, these coins are not nostalgia, they're strategy. They're a bridge between the past and a more secure, independent future. If you're serious about building wealth differently, about recognizing value before the crowd does, then this is your moment to look again at what you already owe. So before you dismiss another penny, before you assume, it couldn't happen to me, remember this, history has already proven that it can. Somewhere, a 1956 D-wheat penny is waiting to be recognized for what it truly is.